conviction by seriously discharging devotional service unto me, and thereby hearing for a long time about me or from me. By thus executing one's prescribed duties, there will be no reaction, and one will be freed from the contamination of matter. Purport. Sridhar Swami comments in this connection that by association with material nature alone, one does not become conditioned. Conditional life begins only after one is infected by the modes of material nature. If someone is in contact with the police department, that does not mean he is a criminal. As long as one does not commit criminal acts, even though there is a police department, he is not punished. Similarly, the liberated soul is not affected, although he is in the material nature. Even the Supreme Personality of Godhead is supposed to be in association with material nature when he descends. But he is not affected. One has to act in such a way that in spite of being in the material nature, he is not affected by contamination. Although the lotus flower is in association with water, it does not mix with the water. This is how one has to live, as described here by the Personality of Godhead, Kapiladev. Animita nimitena swa dharmina malatmana. One can be liberated from all adverse circumstances simply by seriously engaging in devotional service. How this devotional service develops and becomes mature is explained here. In the beginning, one has to perform his prescribed duties with a clean mind. Clean consciousness means Krishna consciousness. One has to perform his prescribed duties in Krishna consciousness. There is no necessity of changing one's prescribed duties. One simply has to act in Krishna consciousness. In discharging Krishna conscious duties, one should determine whether, by his professional or occupational duties, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is satisfied. In another place in the Bhagavatam it is said, Swanushtistasya dharmasya samsiddhira haritoshanam. Bhagavatam 1.2.13. Everyone has some prescribed duties to perform, but the perfection of such duties will be reached only if the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is satisfied by such actions. For example, Arjuna's prescribed duty was to fight, and the perfection of his fighting was tested by the satisfaction of Krishna. Krishna wanted him to fight, and when he fought for the satisfaction of the Lord, that was the perfection of his professional devotional duty. On the other hand, when contrary to the wish of Krishna, he was not willing to fight, that was imperfect. If one wants to perfect his life, he should discharge his prescribed duties for the satisfaction of Krishna. One must act in Krishna consciousness, for such action will never produce any action. Animita nimitena. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Jagannatha kamano Yatra. All activities should be performed simply for yajna, or the satisfaction of Vishnu. Anything done otherwise, without the satisfaction of Vishnu or yajna, produces bondage. So here it is also prescribed by Kapila Muni that one can transcend material entanglement by acting in Krishna consciousness, which means seriously engaging in devotional service. This serious devotional service can develop by hearing for long periods of time. Chanting and hearing is the beginning of the process of devotional service. One should associate with devotees and hear from them about the Lord's transcendental appearance, activities, disappearance, instructions, etc. There are two kinds of shruti, or scripture. One is spoken by the Lord, and the other is spoken about the Lord and his devotees. Bhagavad Gita is the former, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the latter. One must hear these scriptures repeatedly from reliable sources in order to become fixed in serious devotional service. Through engagement in such devotional service, one becomes freed from the contamination of matter. Of Maya. Through engagement in such devotional service, one becomes freed from the contamination of Maya. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead cleanses the heart of all contamination caused by the influence of the three modes of material nature. By continuous regular hearing, the effects of the contamination of lust and greed to enjoy or lord it over material nature diminish. And when lust and greed diminish, one then becomes situated in pure goodness, in the mode of goodness. This is the stage of Brahman realization, or spiritual realization. In this way, one becomes fixed on the transcendental platform. Remaining fixed on the transcendental platform is liberation from material entanglement. I offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and to all of you present today. You are Vaishnavas and therefore are the most worshipable in all the three worlds. Hare Krishna. This is an attractive verse by Kapila Dev because Devahuti has asked a question which is a frequently asked question, which is, does this Krishna conscious process actually work? Because she had felt frustrated in the beginning of her interaction with Kapila Dev, or rather she had expressed her frustration to Kapila Dev, knowing his competency to clear or help her come out of the frustration. And here, again, she's expressing a doubt. She says, previous to this verse, that material nature seems so much part of my life. In other words, I seem like I'm part of my mind. I actually seem like I'm part of this material nature. And I've been so since the time immemorial. So how is it that I would actually even come out of this situation and come to the point of liberation? And Krishna's, Kapila Dev's answer is very straightforward. He doesn't say it's impossible at all. He just says that if you align yourself properly in your work, and that is tena tyaktena bunjita, you work according to what's given to you by the Lord. And as Sri Upanishad says, kurvani viha karmani jijivishek shatam samaha evam tvainanyate tosti na karma lipite nare. That if you're working in this spirit of Isavasya, working for Krishna, as Prabhupada says here, figure out if what you're doing is pleasing to the Supreme Lord. That's the test. And if it can pass that test, then your work is okay. Because savai pumsam parodharmo yato bhaktiratoksaje ahitukiya pratiyata yayatma suprasidati, and dharmasya hyapavargasya nartarto yopakalpate nartasya dharmaikantasya kamalobhaya hi smita dharma swanustita pumsam vishvaksena katasuya notpariyad yadiratim shrama eva hi kevalam. There's several verses here, what's the next one? That describe the parameters for humans to work so that they won't become frustrated. And that is to work with satisfying the Lord in mind, as there is some work required in this world to maintain. And at the same time, one should remain engaged in devotional service. One should maintain his or her connection to the process of devotional service. So that's one aspect. And the second aspect of this verse is that one should hear chiram for a long time. He says, hear for a long time. So one should have a 100-year plan. Sometimes I have a plan for 3 years or 4 years or a month or something like that. But if one is serious about overcoming the encumbrance of being in the material world, to say the least encumbrance, one should apply oneself to a 100-year plan of hearing and chanting and be on schedule to regularly hear. And if you really want to make advancement, says Jiva Goswami, then you have to hear heavily. For instance, in the verse, Bhakti Parushanubhavu Virakti Ranyata Traishatrika Eka Kala Prapadya Manasya Yatashnata Tushti Pushti Shuddha Payonugasam, Jiva Goswami comments, and the verse means that devotional service is like eating. Because when you eat, you get nourished, satisfied, and your hunger goes away. So similarly, when you perform devotional service, you get bhakti, which is related with satisfaction. You feel satisfaction. And then you also get anubhava, which means that you actually connect with the Lord personally. And you're nourished by that. And then finally you get virakti, which is analogous to becoming satisfied when you're eating. When you eat, you're no longer hungry anymore. There's a slight flaw in that analogy, Jiva Goswami says, because although you get satisfied by taking devotional service, by hearing and chanting, you can still, at the same time, eat more and more and more. Swadu swadu pade pade. The sages at Naimisarani said, although you're speaking, this is sweet, we want more and more. And so, Jiva Goswami says that this process of hearing and chanting is the way in which we become freed from the influence of material nature. And one must make a plan for this so that one can continually hear about Krishna. And this is the way to actually overcome the attraction to the material nature. Last point I'll make right now, because I want to have more discussion. The Srimad Bhagavatam points out that this hearing is actually brings pleasure, a kind of intense pleasure that helps one to overcome the attractions of the material world. Yat pada pankacha palasha vilasya bhaktya karmashrayam gratitam udgratayanti santa tadvanna rikta matayo yatayo pirudha shroto ganas tamaranam bhajavasudevam. The Srimad Bhagavatam says the devotees, they relish hearing about the Lord so much. Pada pankacha palasha vilasa bhaktya. The vilas, the playful dealings, the beautiful dealings of Krishna, as we've been hearing over the last few days, become so attractive that the devotee is fully satisfied. So much so, yet pada pankacha palasha vilasya bhakta karmashrayam gratitam udgratayanti santa. The verse says that person is able to cut the knots. There's a knot within the heart, says the Srimad Bhagavatam, that impels me to enjoy material nature again and again, even though I know it's against my best interest. And I go on enjoying. It's also described as a weakness of heart. And how to overcome that weakness of heart, one has to take the process of devotional service. It can cut the knot. It can give one actually inner strength to not be attracted to material nature. Whereas tadvanna rikta matayo, those who try other processes, they're called rikta matayo. They actually, they're brainless, says Jiva Goswami in his commentary, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. They have nothing in mind. They have nothing positive in mind. Narikta matayo. So, shroto ganas tamaranam bhajavasudevam. They're overcome when the big waves come of sense gratification. They're washed away. They have nothing to hold on to. The conclusion here is that Krishna consciousness is effective, but one must apply it. I forgot a point that I was going to make from the verse Bhakti Parishanu Bhavu Viraktir, and that is that, as I was saying, Jiva Goswami says that when you eat, you can get a little satisfaction if you eat a little bit. But if you eat a lot, then you get really satisfied. So the recommendation here is pretty logical. Eat a lot. And for devotees, it means being in touch with hearing about Krishna, and then of course aligning one's work with serving Krishna. Brahman yadaya karamani sangam tyakva karotiya lipyate nasapapena padma patram ibambasha. Krishna says in the Gita a similar thing in the 5th chapter. And that is, he said, be like a lotus flower that's in the water but it's not touched by the water. You have to watch a lotus to understand what that means. And so he says, Brahman yadaya karamani sangam tyakva karotiya. That tyakva means to give up the idea that I own the fruit of my work. Be a selfless servant, in other words. This is the secret to doing your work. Even if you're obligated to do some work in the material world, do it as a servant. And there are various ways of doing that. Prabhupada mentions in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that you should consider whatever work you're doing, this has been allotted to me by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'm doing it for Him. The other, even more tangible way is to give away the fruit of your work to Krishna. That's where the rubber meets the road. So I was walking with Madhava Maharaj once in Vrindavan. He wanted to go visit this tree that was way off the path. I wasn't in the mood, so I said, I'll do it mentally. And he said, that's fine, as long as when we get back, you take prasadam mentally also. So in a similar way, when you actually give away the fruits of your labor, you feel a little pinch. And in that pinch, you get a little self-realization. And if you keep doing that, then your work becomes factually aligned with Krishna. So those are two aspects. It's a very encouraging verse for me because it's Kapila Dev's direct answer to, does Krishna consciousness actually work? Will I ever get out of this? Is there a point at which I'll actually realize that I'm not my body and that I'll be freed from the modes of material nature? Because there is a way that much of it is philosophical. I'm imagining it, but there's a difference between being actually liberated from the modes of material nature, or as I read the other day from Prabhupada's purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you experience Krishna consciousness as a solid fact. It's actually, that's where you live. You're in Nishta. You're actually solidly situated, both feet on the ground, not affected by sense gratification or the waves of material nature at all. And can one get to that point? The answer is a resounding yes. Just take the process very seriously, have a 100-year plan at least, maybe 101 year in case you live that extra year, and apply yourself. And that will take some reflections and questions to expand the conversation. Ananda Murari, infield fly rule.
Thank you very much. One thing I've been thinking about recently is that you're speaking about making a plan to hear and chant. And sometimes I've observed that there can almost be like a passive idea, if I just hear and chant, or if I just do devotional service, then everything will be fine. And then like anarthas aren't actually being uncovered or worked on. So my thought was, and I wanted to just see if this is a correct thinking, but that hearing and chanting is actually an active process. It's not just a passive process. Yes, by hearing and chanting alone, one can become fully purified, but it's an active process along the way. Is that correct?
Yes. When one chants Hare Krishna, one has two duties. One is to chant Hare Krishna. The other is to be attentive. And attentiveness also means to avoid the 10 offenses. And also, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes into more detail, to identify anarthas and to pluck them out as one's chanting. Otherwise, when you chant Hare Krishna, you water the whole garden. And the anarthas can also be nourished by that. And when they come up, you have to have expert help, call in some other gardeners who know what weeds look like and pull them out. So it's very much active for those who want to advance. Therefore, it's recommended that one have a really good mentorship. And it's helpful if you have mentorship from those who are very advanced, who have gone through situations that have been trying and they've overcome them. This is what maturity means. Now, there's no replacement for maturity. You can't buy it. And it comes through hard-fought battles throughout one's life. For those who are actually fixed on the goal of Krishna consciousness, there will be many battles. There will be some that are won and some that are lost. And sometimes the devotees learn more in the ones that are lost when they right themselves again. Prabhupada mentions this in light of the Bhagavad, where he says that failures may not be detrimental. They may become... No, he says they become the pillars to success. And therefore, we should surround ourselves with those who are mature And mature people know what anartas look like, and they can help you out if you're open to it. That's part of being active, is really being open to being corrected. Otherwise, we can protect our anartas also. That's a problem. I've noticed that. I was driving home from the temple one day, and I saw an anarta pop up in front of me. And then I thought, well, if I keep this in front of me and bring my conscious awareness to it, then I'll have to deal with it. Otherwise, I could put it in the box and leave it in the back again and let it stay there. And then I realized, as I was watching that mental process, of what it means to maintain material desires even after understanding so many instructions on the matter. Because you maintain gardens, you're careful to maintain them, you can maintain dependence, and anartas can be maintained also. It's an active process as well. Sort of unconscious, but you still have a section of mind that says, I need these for later. Or maybe if I give these up, I won't be able to enjoy life. And that has to be confronted actively. Is that really true? That can be overcome by the association of those who have a taste, who have overcome anartas. Because we're carried away, just like the kirtan this morning. I was carried away. I felt the power of somebody who's got true spiritual enthusiasm, and then I didn't have to do much except be there. So, but we have to be there all the time and stay active and aware. So I said a lot of questions, but I'm bogarting as usual. Go ahead.